This is Pokemon Anil, a fan game created by this guy that's with Pokemon from generations 1 through 9 Mega Evolutions, and an expansion on the Kanto story, and has been touted by many across the internet as the definitive Kanto experience. And we are here today to see if we can beat this game on our first try as a hardcore Nuzlocke. That means if a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead. The level cap is the next leader's ace, no active items can be used in battle, and we play the games on set mode. If you like this video, or maybe even just the sound of my voice, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And if you could maybe give that like button a tickle, or maybe leave a comment also, that'd be great. As of the time of this recording, we're just under 20,000 subscribers, and nearly 100,000 people check out my videos every month. So you've probably seen another one of them before, so come on, just hit the button. Plus, I'm at the end of the alphabet, so I'm not gonna be cluttering up what you're looking at most of the time, so just do the thing. Especially if this isn't your first time here. A cool thing about this game is that you not only get to choose between red and green as a potential protagonist, but you can also choose yellow, which is super neat. But since this is a retelling of the Kanto story, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't choose red. And as always, blue is going to be named Rando. If you've watched any of my Infinite Fusion videos in the past, you know that Rando's always up to, well, random stuff. But since this is my first run of the game and the story's a little bit different, I don't know how Rando's going to be, but we'll find out. Another really neat thing is you have a couple of options when it comes to modes. The first is a classic mode, which is going to be Gen 1 and 2 Pokemon, so a more traditional Kanto experience. The complete mode with Pokemon from generations 1 through 9, as well as a radical mode, which boosts up the difficulty and adds additional Pokemon to each of the teams. Even though technically a proper Kanto run would be in classic mode, we're going to go for complete mode, because honestly, I want to see the cool sprites. And even though you can choose starters from any generation, I'm going to go with Kanto, because we're in Kanto and this is my first time playing the game. When we step outside of our house, we can see Professor Olivier over here from Pokemon Z, who gives us a bunch of information about the game. And I was wondering why there was no randomizer mode, but over here on the right, here it is. But since this is our first run, we're not going to be randomizing it. I want to see what the full story has to offer, but if you guys like the video, maybe we'll do a randomizer some other time. Over to Professor Oak's lab, the time has come for us to choose our first starter Pokemon. As you can see on the table here, we have the normal Kantonian starters, but over on the right is a super secret special Pokemon. And that super secret special Pokemon is a Pikachu. But we're not going to choose that. And even though Charmander was my first ever starter Pokemon back in Pokemon Red, we're not going to choose that either. Bulbasaur, who's by far the best Pokemon in the Nuzlocke, we're not picking them either. Yes, everybody, we're going to be going with Squirtle. It's by far the Kanto starter that I've chosen the least. In real life, my wife is called dibs on Charmander, and Bulbasaur seems to be our daughter's favorite, which just leaves me with this little fella, who we're gonna nickname Blaster. But before Professor Oak can finish talking, Rando just rushes out of the building. And this is when Professor Oak lets us know there's actually a third person who's supposed to be joining us on our journey. But she's still at her house over in Viridian City, so he wants us to go meet up with her and make sure everything's okay. Over in Viridian City, we meet up with Professor Oak's third and final intern? Research assistant? What exactly are we? She lets us know she's never left Viridian City before, so she's hesitant about traveling the entire country, which, honestly, I'm with you, lady. She then introduces herself as Green, and lets us know she'll head to Professor Oak's lab right now. Back in the lab, Green gives Professor Oak his secret parcel, which it turns out in this game are our Pokedexes from Hoenn. Professor Oak lets us know he's been working with Devoncorp to develop the first ever Pokedex, a system to electronically capture all information on Pokemon seen and caught. And he needs our help to help fill this thing. And since this is going to be free labor, he says that we're interns. And we're all given our Pokedexes, as well as our Pokevile and a couple of Pokeballs. Rando then lets us know his secret ambition. He intends on traveling around Kanto, catching as many Pokemon as he can, to eventually become the Pokemon League champion. And with that influence, he will open his very own themed chain restaurant, called Rando's. There'll be all sorts of random memorabilia all over the walls, just like every good chain restaurant, and then he rushes out to begin his journey. In Palatown, we're going to grab ourselves a Mareep, who we're going to nickname Sean. And on Route 1, we're going to grab ourselves a Ladybug, who we're going to nickname Sentai. In Viridian City, we're going to grab ourselves a Glameow, who we're going to name Kit Kat. Over on Route 20, we're going to grab ourselves a Poochyena, who we're going to nickname Poochie. Over on Route 20, we run into Rando. He lets us know that he's scoping out his first franchise location for Rando's, the random restaurant full of random stuff. But before he can give away too many of his corporate secrets, he challenges us to a battle. Rando starts off by sending in a Pidgey, and we're sending in Blaster. We go for a bubble on the first turn, getting the Pidgey just below half as it goes for a tackle, scoring a crit. On the following turn, Rando uses a potion, which is totally cheating in a hardcore Nuzlocke, but we're going to go for another bubble, this time scoring a crit, getting it way down into the red. And on the following turn, one more bubble takes the Pidgey down. Up next comes his Bulbasaur, and apparently I forgot to change it to set mode. So when Bulbasaur comes in, we're going to swap out, sending in Sentai as he goes to set up a Leech Seed. Now that he's used Leech Seed on Sentai, we're going to swap out, this time sending in Kit Kat as the Bulbasaur goes for a tackle. Now going for a stab fake out, we do about a third. And on the following turn, we can go for a scratch, getting him down to about a third as the Bulbasaur uses Growl. On the following turn, we're going to get this thing way down into the red as the Bulbasaur lays down another Leech Seed. But after just one more scratch, we take down the Bulbasaur, defeating Rando. Over on Route 2 South, because apparently it has a different name, we're going to grab ourselves an Oddish, who we're going to nickname Petal. Before entering Viridian Forest, we're going to run into Green, who, having never left her house before, is incredibly nervous about entering a mysterious forest. She then lets us know that Rando had offered her a management position at Rando's Random Restaurant, but she's not so sure about a career at R4, let alone leaving where she grew up, but she wants to challenge us to a Pokemon battle for confidence. Green starts off by sending in a Mankey, and we're going to send in Blaster. We're going to go for a workup on the first turn to increase our attacks, as the Mankey goes for a Focus Energy. On the following turn, we're going to go for a Withdraw because I hit the wrong button, and the Mankey goes for a Low Kick, doing barely anything. Then on the following turn, we're going to go for a Bubble, scoring a massive hit on the Mankey, getting it way down into the red. Green is then going to use a potion to heal her Mankey up as we fire off another Bubble, this time getting it way back down to the red again, and one more for the KO. Next up is Charmander, and going for a single Bubble, we can KO it no problem, and with that, we've defeated Green. In the Viridian Forest, we're going to grab ourselves a Caterpie. We're going to nickname Flutter. And on Route 2 North, we're going to grab ourselves a Bunnelby. We're going to nickname Bugs. In Pewter City, we're going to grab ourselves a Lillipup, who we're going to nickname Whiskey. Meanwhile, we also run into Brock in the museum, where he's admiring a couple of rocks, because of course he is. He's Brock. And then Team Rocket comes busting in, ready to steal the fossils. But then Brock refuses to accept the disrespect of these Team Rocket Crunch and his precious rocks, and declares that they must be ejected from the museum. And without a second thought, Brock literally picks up the Team Rocket Grunts and throws them out of the museum with his mighty rippling rocky muscles. He then lets us know he's returning to the gym so we can challenge him for our first badge. And now it's time for us to take on Brock and his rock hard boys. Brock starts off by sending in a Dwebble, and we're going to send in Blaster. Going for a Water Gun on the first turn, we can score a massive hit on the Dwebble, grabbing the Oko. Next up, he's going to send his Bonsly. And knowing this thing has Trailblaze, we're going to swap Blaster out, sending in Petal instead as it goes for a Rock Smash. On the following turn, it goes for a Flail, and we can fire back with an Absorb, doing a massive amount of damage, getting it down pretty low. The Bonsly then goes for a Flail on the following turn again, this time scoring a much bigger hit, and we can KO it with an Absorb. Brock sends in his Ace Onix, who's going to outspeed us, setting up a Sand Tomb, getting us knocked down to just about half, but we're going to go for a quad effective Absorb, getting it way down, activating its Sturdy. Brock is then going to use his first Super Potion, which is incredibly unfortunate because that means his Sturdy is going to be activated again as we get it way down into the red. Onix is then going to go for a Rock Tomb on the following turn, getting us down just below half, slowing us down, but one more Absorb can secure the KO, defeating Brock and earning our Boulder Badge. And after the battle, Sean is going to evolve into a Flaffy. While fighting our way across Route 3, Blaster is going to evolve into a Wartortle. Over on Route 3, we're going to grab ourselves a Jigglypuff, who we're going to nickname Kirby. Also on Route 3, Whiskey is going to evolve into a Herdier. In the Route 3 Pokemon Center, we're going to buy a Magikarp from this sucker, who we're going to nickname Steven. Next up is going to be Poochie, who is going to evolve into a Mightyena. In Mount Moon, we're going to grab ourselves a Sandshrew, who we're going to nickname Sanic. While making our way through Mount Moon, we run into Green once again. She then lets us know that a random Team Rocket grunt handed her a job application and asked if she wanted to join Team Rocket. And why does everybody keep offering her random jobs? But anywho, I guess it's time for us to have our second rival battle against Green. She starts off by sending in Mankey, and we're going to send in Whiskey. We're then going to swap Whiskey out, this time sending in Blaster as the Mankey goes for a Karate Chop. On the following turn, we're going to go for a Water Gun, scoring a massive hit, bringing it down just below half. And on the following turn, we can outspeed, going for another Water Gun, grabbing the KO. Next up comes Hoot Hoot. And Blaster's going to go for another Water Gun, doing about a third, as the Hoot Hoot goes for a Confusion, scoring basically no hit on us. Then going for another Water Gun, we're going to bring it down into the red, as the Hoot Hoot fires off another Confusion. Green is then going to use her first Super Potion, as we're going to go, once again, squirting some water at this dude, getting it down to about half. And after 2 more Water Guns, we can take the Hoot Hoot down. This is going to lead into our Ace Charmeleon, who's going to outspeed us in the first turn, going for an Ember. And it unfortunately burns us, but we're going to go for a Water Gun, scoring a pretty big hit, bringing it down to about a third. We're then going to swap Blaster out, sending in Whiskey, getting the Intimidate off. And the Charmeleon goes for a Rock Smash, doing some decent damage to us, and then follows up with an Ember, bringing it down just below half, and then we go for a return, grabbing the KO on Charmeleon, defeating Green. At the back of Mount Moon, we run into this guy that looks a lot like Archer, but with a terrible haircut. He introduces himself as Atlas, and he hears what we say about his haircut, and demands that we battle for his satisfaction. Atlas starts off by sending in an Imptimp, and we're going to send in Petal. Imptimp goes for a Fake Out on the first turn, which is going to do what Fake Out does. And it outspeeds us on the following turn, going for a Draining Kiss, doing just a bit of chip damage. We're then going to fire off an Acid, scoring a massive hit, getting him down to about a third. Imptimp's going to go for a Bite at that point, getting us down just below half, and one more Acid can pick up the KO. Up next comes his Ace Golbat, and we're going to swap Petal out, sending in Sean. The Golbat then goes for a Gust, which obviously we can resist. The Golbat outspeeds us in the following turn, going for a Poison Fang, and luckily our Static activates, slowing it down, and we fire off a Thunder Shock, getting it down to around 50%. After it heals up with a Thorn Berry, we're going to go for another Thunder Shock, bringing it down into the red as the Golbat goes for a Bite, bringing us down to just 8 HP on a crit, which is going to activate our Citrus Berry. Atlas then uses a Super Potion, healing the Golbat up to full as we fire off another Thunder Shock, bringing it down just below half. And knowing we'll get the KO, we stay in, going for one more Thunder Shock, bringing it down. Atlas' final Pokemon, Houndour, comes in, and I'm going to swap Sean out, this time sending in Whiskey. The Houndour goes for a Fire Fang, which is going to do quite a bit more damage than I anticipated. But we're going to go for a Rock Smash on the following turn, bringing this thing way down into the red as the Houndour goes for another Fire Fang, bringing us down to about half, activating our Citrus Berry. And with just one more Rock Smash, we bring the doggo down and we defeat Atlas. Then as Atlas blasts off, he declares that he totally meant to leave on purpose because they've gotten more than enough fossils. On Route 4, we're going to grab ourselves an Impidimp, who we're going to nickname Loki. Over in Cerulean City, we're going to grab ourselves a Wattrel, who we're going to nickname Zippy. Before we face off against Rando, we're going to add Sentai back into the party and evolve it into a Ladian, who in this game gets huge power. Let's go. We run into Rando over on Nugget Bridge, where he lets us know that he's got a great idea for Rando's Random Restaurant. In addition to all the random memorabilia strewn upon the walls, he wishes to only serve the finest of chicken nuggies. His inspiration? This golden bridge of nuggets. Then he says, I know what you're thinking. You want to know about dipping sauces. Rando, I didn't want to know about dipping sauces. Well, guess what, Soap? They're gonna be totally random. You'll never know what you're dipping it into. Is it barbecue sauce? Is it battery acid? And while I have to admit I don't 100% know about restaurant law, that doesn't seem legal or like a good idea. And now it's time to battle. Rando starts off by sending in Pidgeotto, and we're gonna send in Whiskey. After getting the Intimidate off, Pidgeotto's gonna go for a quick attack, doing a little bit of chip damage to us as we throw a bunch of rocks at this bird, scoring a massive hit, getting it down to about a quarter. With its speed lowered, we can go for another Rock Tomb and grab ourselves the KO. Rando then sends out his Raticate, and it's going to go for a Hyper Fang, scoring a pretty big hit, getting us down to about half as we go for a Rock Smash, getting him down just below half. Rando's then going to use his first Super Potion, and we're going to go for yet another Rock Smash. The Raticate's gonna go for another Hyper Fang, getting us down to just 19 HP, but after one more Rock Smash, we can grab the KO. Kadabra comes in as his next Pokemon, and assuming a confusion, we're gonna swap out, sending in Poochie, and we call it. On the following turn, it's gonna go for a Shockwave, doing about a quarter to us, and we're gonna fire back with a Bite, grabbing ourselves the Yoko. Rando's then gonna send in his Ace Ivysaur, and we're gonna go for a Bite, doing just over half as the Ivysaur fires off a Razor Leaf, which is gonna get us down to about half. Once it heals up with its Citrus Berry, we're gonna go for yet another Bite, bringing it way down into the red as the Ivysaur goes for an Acid, bringing us down to just 19. But since we outspeed, one more Bite takes down the Ivysaur, and we defeat Rando. Over on Route 24, we're gonna grab ourselves a Deerling, who we're gonna name Dasher. While fighting our way across Route 24, Petal's going to evolve into a Gloom. At the end of Route 24, we go into Bill's house where we find he's accidentally fused himself up with a Ninurino. And I had no idea that Pokemon Fusion was alive and well in this universe. But he meant to do the reverse of the fusion, because how is he supposed to do science without thumbs? He then heads into the fusion machine, and then we head over to the computer, activate it, and Bill steps out the other side. Bill then unbuttons the top button on his shirt, showing that he still has Ninurino's poison barbs, just in case. And as a reward, he gives us a boat ticket. And I love that in this game, it's just called Boat Ticket. And now it's time for us to face off against Misty and her water Pokemon. He starts off by sending in Goldeen, and we're sending in Petal. The Goldeen's going to set up a Rain Dance on the first turn, and we're going to go for a Mega Drain, grabbing ourselves the Yoko. Next in comes our Floatzel. It's going to go for an Ice Fang, scoring a massive hit, getting us down just below 50% as we go for a Mega Drain, bringing ourselves back up to full and getting it into the red. Misty is then going to use a Super Potion, and we're going to go for another Mega Drain, and this time we're going to grab the KO. Finally, your Ace Starmie comes in, and assuming a Psychic move, we're going to swap out, sending in Poochie, and when she goes for a Psybeam, nothing happens. On the following turn, she's going to go for a Water Pulse, scoring a massive hit as our Bite brings it right down into the red. We're then going to swap Poochie out, sending in Sentai since it has the highest special defense on my team, and a Water Pulse still does more than 50%. It's going to go for another Water Pulse, bringing it down to just 14 HP, and we're going to break through, going for a U-turn, and grabbing ourselves the KO. And with that, we defeat Misty. On Route 5, we're going to grab ourselves a Swablu, who we're going to nickname Nimbus. Over on Route 6, we're going to grab ourselves a Spoink, who we're going to nickname Piglet. And over on Route 6, apparently there are static Pokemon, so we're going to grab ourselves a Fungus, who we're going to nickname Toad. In Vermilion City, we're going to grab ourselves a Drillbur, who we're going to nickname Knuckles. Over on Route 15, we're going to grab ourselves a Charcadet, who we're going to nickname Zero. And guess what we find in Diglett's Cave? And we're going to nickname Diglett Fast Guy. On the SSM, we run into both Rando and Greem, and Team 3-Ball is together again at last. Rando says he's here scouting out for locations of Rando's random restaurant, and Green is here because after going for a relaxing swim in the Vermilion Bay, she accidentally got hit by the boat. So fearing a lawsuit, they brought her on board and said she can stay as long as she wants. And out of nowhere, Team Rocket Grunt begins to approach us. We each grip a Pokeball ready for battle as he excuses himself and proceeds to his cabin. But Team Rocket's not supposed to be nice. What is this trick? And Rando, knowing that Team Rocket's legitimate business dealings have to do with real estate, rushes off to find them because no one's gonna take this franchise away. After following this woman into the cabin, we see her questioning this scientist. After backing her up against the wall and doing that tall girl thing that I see in a bunch of memes at cons, while slightly titillated, the scientist still refuses. She will not hand over the Project M documents to the likes of Team Rocket, even if they're the ones that sponsored it in the first place. And this is where Athena/Ariana recognizes us as the people that beat up Archers, and now it's time for us to Pokemon battle. Athena starts off by sending in her Murkrow, and we send in Whiskey. Murkrow's immediately going to U-turn out, doing quite a bit of damage to us on a critical hit. And she's going to swap out, sending in Arbok to get the Intimidate off on us. Whiskey's then going to go for a Rock Tomb, that way we can lower this thing's speed, but we do barely any damage. We're then going to swap Whiskey out and send in Blaster as the Arbok goes for a Crunch. On the following turn, we're going to go for a Water Pulse, doing about a third, and luckily we confuse the Arbok. And once it smacks itself in the face, We're going to swap Blaster out and then send in Sentai. The Arbok breaks through, going for a Poison Fang, scoring a massive hit on Sentai, and it gets the poison off. Assuming another Poison Fang, we're going to swap Sentai out, this time sending in Petal. The Arbok breaks through again, going for a Crunch, doing about 50% to Petal. Now breaking through on the Confusion, it's going to go for another Crunch, and it's going to score a crit, KOing our first Pokemon of the run. So I guess we're going to send in Sean, and we're going to get the Intimidate off on the Arbok. And going for a Stab Return, we can safely KO the Snake. Her Murkrow's going to come back in, and it's going to go for an Aerial Ace, doing about 25% to us, and we're going to fire off our Rock Tomb, lowering its speed and getting it down pretty low. After healing up with our Citrus Berry, we're in a pretty good shape, so we stay in, going for one more Rock Tomb, KOing the Murkrow. Her final Pokemon, Whirlpeed, comes in, and we go for a Rock Tomb, and unfortunately we miss as this thing goes to set up an Iron Defense. On the following turn, we're still going to go for a Rock Tomb, and we score a crit, which is awesome because we can get this thing to about 25%, lowering its speed, as the Whirlpeed goes for a Poison Jab, doing some decent damage to us. We then connect with another Rock Tomb, but with the +2, we do barely anything as another Poison Jab comes in, getting us down to 4. And the Poison Jab poisons us, so Whiskey goes down 2, and that's 2 Pokemon down against Athena. We're going to send in Sentai as Athena heals up with a Super Potion, and we are in a really bad way as the Tackle does effectively nothing. So we're going to swap Sentai out, and then we're going to send in Poochie. The Whirlpeed's going to go for another Poison Jab, and it's going to do barely anything to Poochie, but this is going to be back and full with his Black Sludge. Going for a Bite, we do about a quarter as a Bug Bite does a massive amount of damage, and it steals our Citrus Berry. Another Bite is going to activate his Poison Point, and now it's hit +4 defense with another Iron Defense. We're going to swap out sending in Blaster, as another Poison Jab does barely anything to us. And going for a Water Pulse, we can score a crit, KOing the Whirlpeed, and I should have just done that in the first place. But we do defeat Ariana/Athena. And before blasting off for their Team Rocket branded rocket boots, Athena promises that Team Rocket will expand their power beyond the stars. And just as the barfing old man gives us the ability to cut down small trees, enter this loud soldier. It turns out that Lieutenant Surge has been on the ship the entire time, but he was taking a nap for the entirety of Team Rocket's invasion. So since there's no bad guys to fight, he'll just go back to his gym and wait for us. Needing to change up our team while fighting up to the level cap, Sean is going to evolve into an Ampharos. Next up is going to be Zippy, and once we get it to level 25, he's going to evolve into a Kilowattrel. Then finally, Kit Kat is going to evolve as well into a Purugly. And now it's time for us to face off against Lieutenant Surge and his electric Pokemon. Surge starts off by sending an Electrode, and we send Sanikin. The Electrode's going to outspeed us on the first turn, going for a Signal Beam, doing about 20%, and we're going to fire off a Drill Run, grabbing the KO. Next up comes Galvantula, and it's going to go for a Signal Beam as well, getting us down pretty low, but we're going to go for a Rock Tomb, grabbing a massive hit, lowering its speed. We're going to swap Sanic out, this time sending in Zippy, assuming another Signal Beam, but Surge just uses a Hyper Potion. Zippy's going to go for an Air Slash, doing just over 50%, as the Galvantula goes for a Signal Beam, which we can obviously resist. But unfortunately, we do get confused. On the following turn, we can break through, going for another Air Slash and grabbing the KO on Galvantula. Magneton comes in as his next Pokemon, and after we slap ourselves in the face, Magneton's going to go for a Mirror Shot, getting us down just below half. So we're going to swap Zippy out, this time sending in Kit Kat as the Magneton goes for another Mirror Shot, scoring a massive hit. We're then going to go for a Fake Out so that way we can break this thing's balloon and obviously get the flinch off. And then this oddly fast Fat Cat can go for a Bulldoze, grabbing the KO on Magneton. Finally, Raichu, his ace, comes in, and we're going to try to go to an electric move, sending in Zippy as it goes for a Discharge, healing us up. Then we're going to go for an Air Slash, only doing about 20%, but we can heal up a bit more with our Shell Bell as the Raichu goes to set up the electric terrain. And honestly, there's nothing that this Raichu can do other than using Grass Knot, so we're just going to stay in and keep on using Air Slashes until eventually we can take down the Raichu. Eventually, Surge is going to use his second Hyper Potion. But ultimately, there's not really anything it can do against Kilowattrel, and we take down Lieutenant Surge, earning our Thunder Badge. We're then going to swap Sonic out of the party, add Knuckles, and evolve it into an Excadrill. We're also going to game the system a little bit. We found a Leaf Stone, we're going to give it to Petal so that way it can evolve into Vileplume. And then over in the cafe, we can trade that Vileplume for a Bulbasaur, who we're going to nickname Petals. And Petals immediately is going to evolve into an Ivysaur. And since its evolution comes more quickly on our way over to Rock Tunnel, Petals is going to evolve into a Venusaur. Over on Route 9, we're going to grab ourselves a Darumaka, who we're going to nickname Fella. Over on Route 10 North, we're going to grab ourselves an Electrike, who we're going to nickname Maisie. Outside of Rock Tunnel, we run into Green. He lets us know that after hesitating to help us over on the SSN, Rando has officially fired her from Rando's Random Restaurant, which I didn't know that she had actually taken the job for. Not exactly sure what her next career move should be, she asked if we can have a battle to see what inspiration strikes. She starts off by sending in Primeape, and we're sending in Zippy. The Primeape is going to outspeed me? Going for a Brick Break, doing nearly 50%? What is this Primeape on? And we're going to go for an Air Slash, getting it way down into the red. Green is then going to heal up with a Hyper Potion, and we're going to fire back with another Air Slash, getting it way down into the red again. Does this thing have Sturdy? What is going on? Green is then going to use her second Hyper Potion, and we're going to fire off a third Air Slash. There we go. That's how we roll higher, grabbing the KO. Next up, she's going to be sending an Eevee. The Eevee starts off by going for a Quick Attack, and with Adaptability, it actually does a surprising amount of damage, and we go for an Air Slash, grabbing a massive hit on a crit, getting it down into the red. The Eevee then goes for another Quick Attack, getting us down to about half, but one more Air Slash can take it out. Next up comes her Ace Charmeleon, and we're going to swap Zippy out, this time sending in Blaster as the Charmeleon goes for a Flame Burst. The Charmeleon then goes for a Dragon Rage, getting us down to just 20 HP, so we're going to go for a Water Pulse, luckily grabbing the KO on a crit. Her final Pokemon, Noctowl, comes in. We're then going to swap Blaster out, sending in Knuckles as we can resist an Air Cutter. On the following turn, we can outspeed, going for a Rock Slide, grabbing a massive hit, getting it down to about a third as the Noctowl sets up a Calm Mind. And with one more Rock Slide, we take down the Noctowl and defeat Green. But just as Green is about to give up hope on not only her career as working at Rando's Random Restaurant, but also that of a Pokemon trainer, enter Mommy Lorelei from Stage Right. She is not only dominating the corporate world, but also that of the Pokemon League. She then reminds Green that not only is she a strong, independent woman who don't need no Rando's Random Restaurant job, but she already has a job, and that's working for Professor Oak to gather information on the Pokedex. Green, you had a job this entire time. It might not be paid in money, but it is paid in experience. And isn't that more important? In Rock Tunnel, we're going to grab ourselves a Knacklestack, who we're going to nickname Minecraft. And while fighting in Rock Tunnel, this random hiker is going to KO my Kit Kat. Also, before facing off against Rando and Pokemon Tower, we're going to grab Blaster up just a bit so it can evolve into a Blastoise. Needing to fill the last slot in our party, we're going to add Fella and evolve him into a Darmanitan. We find Rando over in Pokemon Tower handing out flyers for Rando's Random Restaurant, because he truly believes that the best thing that morning people can do is stuff their face full of chicken nuggets. When I let him know that this is potentially a little insensitive, he gets mad. He challenges us to a battle. Rando starts off by sending in Pidgeotto, and we send in Zippy. We're going to go for a Volt Switch on the first turn, grabbing ourselves the Oko on the Pidgeotto. And assuming he's going to send in Kadabra next, we're going to send in Poochie as Growlithe comes in. Going for a Crunch, we grab a massive hit, getting it way down to the red and getting the defense drop. A Fire Fang does about a third, and once Rando uses the Super Potion, another Crunch is more than enough with the defense drop to get the KO. Next up comes his Ivysaur, and we're going to stay in, going for another Crunch, getting him just below 50% and grabbing ourselves the defense drop. And a Giga Drain scores a massive hit, getting us down to just 21 HP before our Citrus Berry activates. We're then going to swap Poochie out, sending Zippy back in as the Ivysaur goes for another Giga Drain, doing a surprising amount. We're going to have Zippy go for an Air Slash, getting this thing way down into the red, while we heal up with our Shell Bell, and this thing goes for a Venoshock this time, doing a crazy amount of damage. Rando then uses his second Super Potion as we go for another Air Slash, scoring a massive hit, getting him down into the red. Rando's going to pivot, taking out Ivysaur and sending in Kadabra, and an Air Slash is going to do some pretty big damage. Predicting a Psychic move, we're going to swap out, sending in Poochie, grabbing ourselves the Intimidate for, reasons, as he tries to go for a Psybeam. Now assuming a Shockwave, we're going to swap out, sending Zippy back in as we can heal up from the Shockwave. Then we can outspeed, going for another Air Slash, KOing the Kadabra. Ivysaur comes back in as his final Pokemon, and we can go for a Thunder Shock, grab the KO, and defeat Rando. In Pokemon Cell, we're going to grab ourselves a Mischievous, who has the Fairy type added in these games. And we're going to nickname this little black mage Vivi. Over on Route 8, we're going to grab ourselves a Capsakid, who we're going to nickname Frank. Over on Route 7, we're going to grab this Poopy Boy, who we're going to nickname Stinky. Oh yeah, I know this guy. He made this game.
This is an office for the development of games created by fans, for fans. I think right now they're pretty busy creating a Musketeer game or something like that.
Make sure you check out the video and like and subscribe. Over in Celadon City, we're going to grab ourselves our Eevee, who as always is our little bean. In Celadon City, we're going to grab ourselves an Elekid, who we're going to nickname Socket. We're then going to add Stinky to the party and have it evolve right away.
Yeah, this gym is great. The facade is well built and the decoration is exquisite. A true work of architectural beauty. Get your damn mind out of the gutter.
And now it's time for us to take on Erica and her grass Pokemon. She starts off by sending in a Tangrowth, and we send in Fella. Fella goes for a Fire Punch on the first turn, doing just over 50%, as the Tangrowth goes for a Rock Slide, scoring a pretty massive hit. On the following turn, we're going to go for another Fire Punch, this time scoring a crit and the KO. Her next Pokemon is going to be Sudowoodo. So we're going to swap Fella out, this time sending in Stinky as he goes for a Rock Tomb, doing a good amount of damage to us. Assuming another Rock Tomb, we're going to swap out, this time sending in Knuckles, but he goes for a Fire Punch, doing about a third to us. We're then going to outspeed, going for an Earthquake, and doing only about a quarter as another Fire Punch comes in, getting us down super low. So predicting another Fire Punch, we're going to swap out, this time sending in Blaster, and we call it as it does barely anything. So this allows us to go for a Snipe Shot, getting it down into the red, as a Wood Hammer comes down, getting us down super low. Erica then uses her first Hyper Potion as we go for another Snipe Shot, this time scoring a crit and grabbing the Oko. Vileplume comes in as her next Pokemon. And we're going to swap Blaster out, sending in Stinky as she goes for a Giga Drain. Our Quick Claw allows us to go first, and we're going to fire off an extra Sensory, getting it down super low as the Vileplume fires off a Sludge Bomb, which is going to KO Stinky. So we're going to send in Zippy, go for an Air Slash, grab the KO. And this is going to lead into Lilligant, her final Pokemon. We're going to outspeed, going for another Air Slash, getting it down super low as she fires off a Giga Drain, doing a little bit more than I honestly expected. But with just one more Air Slash, we can grab the KO, defeat Erica, and earn our Rainbow Badge. But at the cost of our little Dung Beetle. To fill up our open spot, we're going to add Loki to the party and then start evolving them. First into a Morgrem, and then one more time into a Grimmsnarl. We see this Cubone outside the Rocket Game Corner instructing us to go inside. And inside we find an aggressive Team Rocket grunt. And after he makes his way downstairs, well, I guess so will we. After fighting our way through Team Rocket's secret base, we see Atlas Archer feverishly typing on a keyboard with Giovanni dictating. It appears as though he's writing down his dream diary. After way longer than it probably should have taken them, they notice that we're in the room, and Giovanni asks Archer to leave so he can talk to us himself. Giovanni then asks us to sign an NDA, since his dreams are his own intellectual property, and if not, he'll sue us into the ground. Not really seeing the harm in it, I go to sign the NDA, until the Cubone who let us know about the Team Rocket base in the first place emerges from the back of the couch. It's here to take revenge for the death of its mother, but all Giovanni does is laugh at this cute, adorable little orphan, and it's at that moment I decide, I won't sign the NDA, and you know what, Giovanni? I think we should Pokemon battle. Because who could possibly be mean to a little orphan? Giovanni starts off by sending in his Persian, and we're going to send in Fella. The Persian is immediately going to U-turn out, which honestly I didn't expect. And after popping our balloon, the Giovanni sends in his Rhydon. We're going to go for a Hammer Arm, which is going to score a pretty big hit, getting it down to about half. Assuming I can still outspeed, we do, going for another Hammer Arm and grabbing the KO on Rhydon. His Kangaskhan comes in next. The Kangaskhan goes for a Crunch, which is going to score a massive hit, getting us down to just 41 HP, and I'm going to go for another Hammer Arm, getting this thing down pretty low. Knowing this is probably a bad idea, I stay in, hoping Giovanni goes for the heal, but he doesn't. And our Darmanitan gets KO'd. So I'm going to send in Zippy, and I'm going to go for an Air Slash and secure the KO on Kangaskhan. Giovanni sends in his Nidoking next. Not sure what he's going to go for. I swap out, sending in Knuckles as the Nidoking goes for a Poison Jab, which obviously we can avoid. On the following turn, we're going to outspeed, going for an Earthquake, and grabbing ourselves the Yoko on the Nidoking. His Persian's going to come back in as his final Pokemon, and it's going to go for a Fake Out, doing what Fake Out does. And on the following turn, it's going to go for a Tail Slap. And after getting us down just below half, we're going to go for an Earth Plate boosted Earthquake, grab ourselves the Yoko, and we're going to defeat Giovanni, but at the loss of our little fella. To fill in the spot, we're going to add Zero to the party, give him a Dust Zone, and evolve it into a Ceruledge. At the top Pokemon Tower, we find Mr. Fuji, who's being held hostage by Team Rocket. And that's when this big fella enters the room. With a glorious beard and an open shirt, he introduces himself as Commander Uranus, the oldest member of Team Rocket. He continues to brag about how old he is, saying that his social security number is simply 1. It turns out that Team Rocket is looking for information on Project M, for which Mr. Fuji was one of the lead researchers. Commander Uranus then warns us that if we don't back off, he'll know exactly where to put our Pokeballs. Uranus starts off by sending in Scyther, and we're going to send in Knuckles. On the first turn, we're going to go for a Swords Dance, and the Scyther is going to do the same. Then we're going to go for a quad-effective Rock Slide, connect, and grab ourselves the Oko even through this guy's Eviolite. Out next comes Kabutops, who is going to outspeed us, going for a Rock Slide of their own, doing barely anything, and we can fire off an Earthquake. And while holding an Earth Plate and at +2, it's more than enough to KO the Kabutops. Out next comes Heracross. Knowing this thing is going to have some kind of fighting move, we're going to swap out, sending in Zippy as it goes for a Brick Break. And going for an Air Slash, we can score a massive hit and the Oko. His last Pokemon, Pinsir, is going to come in. And it is going to Mega Evolve into Mega Pinsir, but we're going to go for an Air Slash. And it's not quite enough to grab the KO. And the Mega Pinsir is going to set up a Swords Dance. And this animated Mega Sprite is so awesome. Uranus is going to use his first Hyper Potion, and we're going to go for another Air Slash. And after getting it way down into the red, Uranus is going to use another Hyper Potion, and we're going to go for another Air Slash. And after a third one, we can take down the Pinsir and defeat Uranus. After giving Uranus a thorough beating, there we go, there's a joke. And after threatening to shove a bunch of other Team Rocket Grunts into Uranus, Rando and Green come brushing in, saying that they've already defeated all the Rocket Grunts outside. Uranus declares an evacuation of Pokemon Tower, and they leave. And Mr. Fuji thanks us for saving him, and from all these Uranus jokes. After heading back to Mr. Fuji's house, he then lets us know about the details of Project M. A few years ago, after Mew's DNA was discovered, he was the head of the research team, which was funded by Silph Co as well as Team Rocket. Their goal was to create the most powerful Pokemon from that Mew DNA. And they succeeded. A creature of unparalleled power came to be. But after destroying their laboratory, it fled, just like at the beginning of the movie, and Giovanni is still desperately trying to find this Pokemon. Rando then declares that the strongest Pokemon in existence would be the perfect mascot for Rando's Random Restaurant, and vows to catch it himself. And while stopping Team Rocket and maybe even catching this very cool secondary Mew. Wonder what its name is. Over on Route 12, we're going to play the Poke Flute for this sleeping bear, who's going to wake up and attack! And after stuffing that sleeping bear in a very tiny ball, we're going to nickname it Dumplin'. Over on Route 12, we're also going to grab ourselves a Tentacool, who we're going to nickname Jelly.
The other day, a novice farmer tried to milk a milk tank at night and got it confused. We're the Toros.
We run into Rando over in Marengo Town, where he lets us know that he's going to be sourcing the finest Miltank milk for his Buttermilk Ranch at Rando's Random Restaurant. And as he's going into extraordinary detail on the proper way to milk a milk tank, none other than the Elite Four's own Agatha comes from stage left. Rando then lets Agatha know that he's found some photos from when she was a little bit younger and used to hang out with his grandfather. She then asks Rando if he likes what he saw. After making Rando incredibly uncomfortable, she then lets us know that she's actually heard of us and our dealings with Team Rocket, and if the two of us can beat her in a battle, she'll give something that'll help us out in our fight, not only to get our badges, but also against Team Rocket. But Rando refuses to be our friend and storms off. So I guess it's time for us to face off against Agatha of the Elite Four. Agatha starts off by sending in Bennett, and we're going to send in Blaster. On the first turn, we're going to quickly go for a Dark Pulse, scoring a pretty decent hit, getting him down to about half as the Bennett fires off a Gunk Shot. That only does about a quarter to us. On the following turn, we're going to go for a Dark Pulse yet again. This time scoring a slightly bigger hit, getting it way down to the red as the Bennett fires off yet another Gunk Shot. But unfortunately, this one poisons us. And with just one more Dark Pulse, we take the Bennett down. Her next Pokemon out is her ace Gengar, and the Gengar is going to Mega Evolve into Mega Gengar. And we're going to swap Blaster out, sending in Zippy as the Gengar goes for a Focus Blast. And even though we resist it, it still does a pretty good chunk of damage. On the following turn, we're going to outspeed, going for an Air Slash, doing just about 50% to the Gengar, as it's going to fire off a Stab Sludge this time, which is going to get us down to just 3 HP. Knowing the only way I can switch out is going to be with a Volt Switch, we're going to go for that, getting the Gengar down super low. And this is going to allow us to swap in setting in Petals. And the Neutral Sludge still does a good amount of damage. Gengar is then going to go for an Ominous Wind, and it's going to knock us way down to just 31 HP. And unfortunately, it gets the Omni Boost. But fortunately, a Stab Giga Drain still KOs the Gengar. Mischievous comes in as her final Pokemon. And we're going to swap Petals out, sending in Zero, assuming a Mystical Fire, which we call right, and it's going to activate our Flash Fire. And now going for an Empowered Stab Bitter Blade, we can KO this thing in just one shot, defeating Agatha. She then teaches us about Mega Evolution and how it works. And as a reward for defeating her, she gives us a Mega Bracelet. Thanks to the Mega Bracelet, you can now use Mega Stones you find on your adventure to Mega Evolve your Pokemon. And she gives us a Blastoise, as well as a Swampert. And before we leave, we're going to grab ourselves an Octillery, who we're going to name Zuka. Over on 13, we're going to grab ourselves a Charjabug. On Route 14, we're going to grab ourselves a Pinsir, who we're going to nickname Mr. Sir. As we go to enter Future City, we're stopped by Green, and with her newfound confidence after talking to Lauren, she's a strong, independent woman who don't need no man, and let's have a Pokemon battle. Green starts off by sending in her Primeape, and we're going to send in Zippy. Knowing this thing has Rock Slide and not wanting to risk it, we're going to Volt Switch out, doing about 50%, and we're going to send in Knuckles. And after making one brilliant move, we make an absolutely stupid one, because I assume that Escadrille is faster than Primeape, and I was wrong. And Knuckles goes down to a close combat. So we send in Blaster as Green goes to use her first Hyper Potion. We go for a Snipe Shot, doing about 60%. The Primeape then goes for a Focus Energy, so one more Snipe Shot takes it down. Charizard comes in next for reasons. And we're going to Mega Evolve Blaster as it goes for a Flamethrower, doing barely anything to us. We can fire off a Snipe Shot and grab ourselves the KO. Noctowl comes in next, and we're going to go for an Icy Wind, grabbing a decent hit, and I really need Ice Beam on this thing as Noctowl goes for a Calm Mind. Switching things up, we're going to go for the Stab on Snipe Shot, getting it down to about a quarter as it goes for a Psyshock. And with one more Snipe Shot, we can take the Noctowl down. Her final Pokemon, Vaporeon, comes in, and we're going to swap Blaster out, setting in Petals as the Vaporeon goes to set up an Acid Armor. I go for a Giga Drain on Petals, doing about 50% as an Aurora Beam takes us down just below half. Petals is then going to go for another Giga Drain, bringing the Vaporeon down way into the red, and the Vaporeon is going to go for another Aurora Beam, and is going to score a crit KOing my Venusaur! And Lorelei was right, she is a strong, independent woman as she goes to use the Hyper Potion to heal back up again. I send in Zippy, going for a Thunder Shock, only doing about a third. Going for another Thunder Shock, you stupid idiot. This thing has Aurora Beam. Getting me down to just 17 HP. So we're going to Volt Switch Zippy out, grab the KO on Vaporeon, and this was an absolute massacre of my team. But we do defeat Green in the end. Over in the Safari Zone, we're going to grab ourselves a Kleavor, who we're going to nickname Kratos. And now it's time for us to face off against Koga and Janine. They start off by sending in Dragalge and Drapion, and we send in Blaster and Zero. And I didn't realize this was a double battle. I should not have sent in Zero. First thing I'm going to do is Mega Evolve Blaster, and then swap Zero out, sending in Dumpling as the Drapion goes for a Poison Jab and manages to get the poison off. Blaster's going to fire off an Icy Wind, doing some chip damage to Dragalge, and a bit to Drapion as well. Dragalge then goes for a layer of Toxic Spikes. Blaster's going to go for a Flash Cannon on the Dragalge, getting it down to about half as Drapion knocks off the leftovers from Dumpling. After that, we're going to go for a Sludge Wave, getting Blaster and Dumpling down to about half as Dumpling goes for high horsepower on the Drapion, bringing it down into the red. Now pretty deep down into the red, we're going to swap Blaster out, sending in Kratos as Koga uses their first Hyper Potion. Dragalge is then going to go for a Sludge Wave, doing some decent damage to Kratos and bringing Dumpling down even lower. From here, Dumpling goes for another high horsepower, bringing the Drapion back down, and Kratos takes a bit of damage. So we're going to swap in the Drapion as Koga uses their second potion, this time on Dragalge, and we're going to get Drapion down way into the red, but Zippy's poisoned and super low now. We're going to swap Kratos in for Zero, who can avoid the Toxic Spikes, and then Full Swift Zippy out, KOing the Drapion. And we're going to send in our only healthy Pokemon, Loki, which is an absolutely horrible idea, as this thing is going to go for yet another Sludge Wave, doing a little bit of chip damage to Zero, popping our balloon, and Loki's going to take a massive amount of damage, but I don't really have a better option at this point. Koga then sends in their ace Beedrill, and yes, you heard that right. The Beedrill is then going to Mega Evolve, go for a Poison Jab, and KO Loki, because honestly, I didn't have a better option here. And we're going to go for a Bitter Blade with Zero, grabbing the Oko, healing back up to full. They're also going to go for a Sludge Wave, doing some chip damage. We're going to send Zippy back in as Crobat comes in as well. Crobat then goes for a Cross Poison on Zippy, grabbing the KO, and I thought I'd outspeed. But Zero's going to go for a Swords Dance, and Dragalge's going to go for a Venoshock, which is going to do barely anything. We're going to send in Kratos. As the Crobat goes for a Cross Poison on Zero, doing barely anything, it can fire back with a Bitter Blade, KOing the Crobat and healing back up to full. Kratos then goes for a Night Slash on the Dragalge, doing a little bit of damage, as the Dragalge then goes for a Muddy Water, and I honestly don't know why I didn't do this in the first place, but down goes Kratos. With my team in absolute shambles, we're going to send in Dumpling, and Zero's going to go for a Shadow Sneak on the Dragalge, bringing it down pretty low as the poison gets activated, and it goes for a Venoshock on Dumpling, grabbing the KO. So we're going to send in our only remaining Pokemon, Blastoise, as Zero can go for a Shadow Sneak, KO the Dragalge, and my team has been absolutely annihilated by Koga and Janine. Over in Fuchsia City, we're going to grab ourselves a Toxtricity, who we're going to nickname 11. Needing to backtrack to fill out our team, we head over to Route 11, where we grab ourselves a Heracross, who we're going to nickname Bonk. Alright, so after rebuilding our absolutely annihilated team, we are going to add Orby the Orbeetle, Bean the new regional Eevee Sephiroth, Socket the Electivire, and finally Toad the Amoonguss. So let's see if we can take on Saffron City and Silph Co. Once we enter Silph Co, we run into Rando. But there's only one problem. Apparently Team Rocket's taken over the entirety of the building, as well as the rest of Saffron City. So Rando knows what we must do. Defeat Team Rocket, expel them from the building in the city, so that way, capitalism, but mostly he, can succeed in business. It's at this moment that we're introduced to yet another Elite Four member, Bruno. Apparently Bruno's been called in to de-escalate the situation, but before he fights, he must meditate on the concept of fighting, and then he falls asleep. So I guess it's going to be up to us and Rando to save everybody in Silph Co. After fighting our way through part of Silph Co, we're going to run into Archer, who's still sporting the most ridiculous tiny ponytail you've ever seen. And he is incredibly excited about Team Rocket's hostile takeover of Silph Co, because not only was it incredibly hostile, it was also legal. Archer starts off by sending in his Grimmsnarl, and we're going to send in Toad. The Grimmsnarl is going to go for a Spirit Break on the first turn, doing basically nothing, but it is going to lower our special attack. And luckily the effect for it poison him, as we go for a Sludge Bomb, doing about half. He's then going to withdraw Grimmsnarl, this time sending in Houndoom, and we're going to go for a Sludge Bomb, and luckily we get the poison off. We're then going to swap Toad out, this time sending in Bean as the Houndoom goes for a Dark Pulse, which I did not see coming. On the following turn, Atlas is going to use his first Hyper Potion, and we're going to go for an Air Slash, doing about 50%. Then after going for another Air Slash, we can KO the Houndoom. His Crobat comes in next, And we're going to outspeed, going for another Air Slash, doing about a third to the Crobat as it goes for a Sludge Bomb, doing a bit of damage to us and unfortunately getting the poison off. So we're going to swap Bean out, this time sending in 0 as the Crobat is going to go for another Sludge Bomb. Crobat then goes for a Giga Drain for some reason, getting a little chip healing in, and we're going to go for a Bitter Blade, bringing it down into the red and healing ourselves back up to full. And then after a Shadow Sneak, we can successfully KO the Crobat. He sends his Grimmsnarl back in, and we're going to go for a Bitter Blade, KO the Grimmsnarl, and defeat Archer. Atlas. Archer Atlas. That's his new canonical name. After exploring a little bit more, this time we run into Ariana, who's sitting comfortably on the couch. She relaxes her shoulders and sits back a little bit, asking if we're here to cause trouble. And I'm getting that same weird dummy mommy energy I was getting when she was interrogating that scientist, and it makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I'm a married man, Ariana. We cannot do this. And she sends out a Honchkrow, and I send in Bean. On the first turn, it goes for a Sucker Punch, and I'm going to go for a Tailwind. And on the following turn, I'm going to go for a Dazzling Gleam, getting its thing way down into the red as the Honchkrow goes for a Drill Peck, scoring a massive hit on us. Athena then uses her first Hyper Potion, and we're going to go for another Air Slash on the Honchkrow. And after just one more, we can KO this Fedora-wearing bird. Next up comes Arbok. And I'm going to swap out, this time sending in Blaster as it goes for a Fire Fang. We're then going to Mega Evolve as it decides to go for a Coil on the following turn. And once we fire off a Snipe Shot, we can quickly get this thing way down into the red as it goes for a Gunk Shot on the following turn, getting us down super low, but just one more Snipe Shot takes it out. Her final Pokemon, Scolipede, comes in. And we're going to swap out, this time sending in 0 as the Scolipede goes for a Mega Horn. After that, it goes for a Poison Jab, barely doing anything, and we can fire off a Bitter Blade, taking it down in one shot and healing ourselves back up. And with that, we've defeated Ariana, and we get our second key card. After fighting our way to the top floor of Silph Co, we're going to run into Rando yet again, and together we've cleaned out basically the entirety of Team Rocket, and only Giovanni remains. But he thinks it'll be great publicity for his restaurant if he's the one to take care of Giovanni. So the only way that we can decide which one of us is allowed to take Giovanni on is by Pokemon battling. The winner takes on the boss. Rando starts up by sending in Pidgeot, and we're going to send in 0. On the first turn, I'm going to go for a Swords Dance, upping my attack by 2 as the Pidgeot goes to U-turn out. And it's going to send in his Alakazam. And with a +2 Shadow Sneak, we go for that, KOing the Alakazam in just one shot. His Venusaur comes in next, and we're going to outspeed, going for a Bitter Blade, and grabbing ourselves the Yoko. Up next comes his Arcanine, and we're going to go for a Shadow Sneak on the first turn, getting it down to about 40% as it goes for a Crunch, doing a massive amount of damage. So we're going to swap 0 out, this time sending in Blaster as it goes for another Crunch. We're then going to Mega Evolve as it goes for a Flare Blitz, getting us down to about half, and with a Snipe Shot, we can take down the Arcanine. The Pidgeot tries to go for a Heat Wave for reasons, and it misses, and we fire off a Snipe Shot, getting it down pretty low. On the following turn, it goes for another Heat Wave, doing some chip damage to us, and with one more shot, we KO the Pidgeot, defeating Rando. Shortly thereafter, we grab our Lapras because we're in Silph Co. Of course we do. Who we're going to nickname Melody. Despite the fact that we're the ones that beat Rando, he rushes upstairs to challenge Giovanni himself, but he forgot to go rest before doing so, leaving him with no Pokemon available. So after this, Giovanni Mega Evolves and literally slaps him in the face. Rando leaves dejected and embarrassed. After returning to yelling at the Silph president about the Master Ball, that way he can capture the mythical Mew clone known as Mew Guy. Giovanni doesn't exactly know what the Pokemon's name yet is, but he'll think of something cool after he captures it. It's at this point where he notices that we're standing slightly to his right, and he challenges us to a follow-up Pokemon battle for the fate of Silph Co. Giovanni starts off with Persian, and we're setting in Bonk. The Persian is going to immediately U-turn out, and Giovanni's going to send in his Nidoqueen, and we're going to go for a close combat, doing barely anything. Assuming a Fire Punch, we're going to swap out, sending in 0, and we call it as he goes for a Fire Punch. This is going to empower Bitter Blade, so we are going to go for that on the following turn, grabbing ourselves the KO and the Nidoqueen. Out next comes Rhyperior, and I'm assuming a Stone Edge, so we're going to swap out, sending Bonk back in, since it's going to be neutral damage on him, but it is still more than enough to KO our little Heracross. So I guess we'll send in Toad, which is what I probably should have done in the first place. As it goes for a Mega Horn, doing about 50% to us. We can go for a Giga Drain, getting this thing down super low. And now that it's paralyzed from our effect spore, Giovanni's going to heal up on the following turn, and we can go for another Giga Drain, getting it way down into the red yet again. And at this point, we can just have Giovanni start wasting his full restores as we go for another Giga Drain. And then when it finally changes things up, going for a Mega Horn, getting us down to half again, one more Giga Drain takes it down. Next up comes Nidoking. And we're going to swap into Zero again, assuming a Fire Punch. And it goes for an Ice Beam instead, which is going to pop our balloon, which sucks. So predicting an Earth Power, we're going to send Bean instead, and it goes for a Poison Jab. Come on, man. Okay, we're sending in Blaster instead. And the Nidoking goes for another Poison Jab, doing more than half on a crit. So we're going to Mega Evolve as the Nidoking goes for a Thunderbolt and KOs Blaster. I'm going to send in Toad because honestly, I don't know what else to do as I got knocked down to just 7 HP. We go for a Giga Drain and we don't even do half to it. Left with no other options, I'm going to stay in and Toad's going to go down. I'm going to send in Orby and I just have to hope that I'm faster, and I can't believe that I am. And we go for a Psychic, taking down the Nidoking. This is going to lead back into Persian. And the Persian goes for a Bite, doing a massive amount of damage, and I'm just going to set up a Sticky Web. Persian is then going to U-turn out, KO Orby, and send in Kangaskhan. Hopefully Orby has the last laugh here. As we send in Zero, the Kangaskhan speed is going to be lowered. Additionally, once it Mega Evolves into Mega Kangaskhan, it's going to go for a Fake Out, which doesn't do anything to us, and we can use a Will-O-Wisp getting the burn off. Now that its attack's been lowered, and so is its speed, it goes for a Thunder Punch on the following turn, as we decide to go for a Swords Dance. Now going for a +2 Stab Bitter Blade, we get it way down into the red as we heal back up to full. It's going to go for another Thunder Punch, and luckily we don't get paralyzed. And with just one more Bitter Blade, we take down the Kangaskhan. Giovanni sends his Persian back in, and the Sticky Web is going to lower its speed. And from here, we can go for a +2 Bitter Blade, grab ourselves the Oko, and by the skin of our teeth, we defeat Giovanni. But we've lost 4 more Pokemon. Giovanni declares that he already has what he needs. The plans to build his own Master Ball. And then just in time to be completely useless, Sabrina shows herself. She sensed that something was wrong and wanted to make sure everything was alright. So I've made this joke in a lot of my Kanto videos, like where are the cops? Where's Sabrina? Like where's somebody? And the fact that both Bruno and Sabrina are here, but ultimately don't do anything, is absolutely hilarious. And now it's time for us to take on Sabrina and her Psychic Pokemon. And I know I haven't mentioned this before, but I really like that these sprites are based off of their Let's Go designs. Sabrina starts off by sending in Farigiraf, and we're sending in Zero. On the first turn, we're going to go for a Swords Dance, doubling our attack, as the Farigiraf sets up a Light Screen. Assuming it's going to go for a Reflect on the following turn, we're going to set up a second Swords Dance, as it goes for a Psyshock instead, doing a massive hit to us. We're then going to go for a Bitter Blade, grabbing ourselves the Oko and healing ourselves back up to full. Next up comes Sigilyph, and going for a Stab Super Effective Shadow Sneak, it's more than enough to take down the Sigilyph. Next up comes Gothitelle, and we're going to do the same thing here, going for a Shadow Sneak, but the Psychic Field blocked it, but it didn't block it the first time, and a Shadow Ball is going to come in doing a lot to us. And with the Psychic Terrain gone, we're going to go for a Shadow Sneak, this time grabbing ourselves the KO. Alakazam comes in next, and guess what, buddy? Even though it's going to evolve into a Mega Alakazam, I'm pretty sure a +4 super effective Shadow Sneak is more than enough to KO, and it is. So this is going to lead to her final Pokemon, Slowking. And even though it's gotten Intimidate off on us, we're still at +3, and a Shadow Sneak is still more than enough to KO, and we sweep Sabrina with 0. After fighting our way through Pokemon Mansion and finding the secret lab where 2Mew was born. Don't worry, we're getting closer with the name. We find a couple of Team Rocket grunts and a commander that I don't recognize. She turns to us with a song in her heart, and she seems a little too cutesy to be a Team Rocket commander. She then introduces herself as Surya, the most beautiful and powerful trainer Team Rocket has to offer. She then sings a song about our defeat and challenges us to a battle. Surya starts off by sending in Wigglytuff, and we're going to send in Jelly. I'm immediately going to swap Jelly out and send in Bean because I know that this thing has Thunderbolt as it goes for a nasty plot on the first turn. We're going to outspeed going for an Air Slash, doing a decent amount of damage as it fires off a Psychic, doing quite a bit to us. On the following turn with this Quick Claw, it gets to fire off a Dazzling Gleam against us. Surya is then going to use her first potion as we go for another Air Slash. Assuming another Fairy move, we're going to swap into 0. And instead she goes for a Psychic, which does about a third to us. On the following turn, we're going to go for a Bitter Blade, getting it down into the red. And the Wigglytuff's going to fire off a Thunderbolt, doing quite a bit to us. Surya's going to use another Hyper Potion, and we're going to go for another Bitter Blade, scoring a pretty decent hit, getting it just below half. And its Quick Claw is going to allow the Thunderbolt to go ahead of us, getting us down to half, and then one more Bitter Blade takes it down. Out next comes Rapidash. And knowing this thing is Drill Run, we're going to swap out, sending in Buzzer as it goes for a Play Rough. In an incredibly precarious position, we're going to stay in as the Rapidash goes for a Mega Horn, knocking us down to 21, and I'm going to throw down some webs. We're then going to swap, this time sending in Jelly as it goes for another Mega Horn. The Rapidash then uses a Psycho Cut, KOing Jelly. I didn't know it had that. So I guess we're going to send in Steven, that way we can intimidate this thing. It's going to go for a Mega Horn, not doing a whole heck of a lot, and we're going to go for a Dragon Dance to boost up our attack and speed. And at +1, we're going to go for an Aqua Tail, getting it way down into the red as it fires off a Play Rough, getting us down to about half. But with one more Aqua Tail, we take it out. Next out comes Togekiss, and we're going to go for an Ice Fang this time, doing just over half as the Togekiss goes for an Air Slash, getting us down to just 38 HP before a Berry heals us. She's then going to withdraw Togekiss, sending in Mega Mawile, and an Ice Fang does next to nothing. So we are going to swap out, sending in 0 as the Mega Mawile goes for a Play Rough. And this thing definitely has a Life Orb, but once we can go for a Bitter Blade on the following turn, we take it down. Togekiss comes back in as her final Pokemon, and we're going to stay in, going for another Bitter Blade, taking it way down into the red as it sets up a nasty plot. But not to worry, because we can go for a Shadow Sneak, grab ourselves the KO, and we defeat Surya and Team Rocket. But we've lost another Pokemon. Oh, okay, so she has like a Ralph Wiggum Butters thing going on with her fairy Pokemon. And then the random Rocket Grunt finds what they've been looking for. The tracker for Spawn Mew, the spawn of Mew. And just like that, they're gone. And to replace Jelly on the team, we're going to add Minecraft and evolve it into a Garganacl. Over on Cinnabar Island, we're going to grab ourselves a Seadra. And right after capturing her, we're going to evolve Ariel into a Kingdra. And now it's time for us to face off against Blaine and his big old fire guys. He starts off by sending in Torkoal, and we're going to send in Steven. My plan here is to try to set up a couple of Dragon Dances as the Torkoal goes for a Lava Plume on the first turn. After going for a second one, it goes for yet another Lava Plume. And now at +2, we're going to go for an Earthquake and grab the Oko on Torkoal. Turtonator comes in next, and we're going to do the same thing, going for another Earthquake, picking up the KO. Out next comes this Houndoom, and it's going to Mega Evolve, but at +2, we're still faster, and we grab the KO. Sunflora comes in next, and once again, we're going to go for an Earthquake, getting it down effectively to nothing as it fires off a Seed Flare, getting it down to just 12. And after Blaine heals up a couple more times, we can take down the Sunflora. His final Pokemon, Typhlosion, comes in, and going for a +2 Earthquake one more time, secures the KO on Typhlosion, and we defeat Blaine thanks to Steven. We meet up with Bill just outside the Cinnabar gym, where he has a lead on Team Rocket's next move. And he wants us to meet up with Rando and Green back over at his house. Over in Bill's house, Rando thanks us for helping him save Silph Co. Because we were able to drive Team Rocket out of the building, he secured the sponsorship to open up this first ever Rando's Random Restaurant in their lobby. Green then asks Rando if he's even decided what they're going to be serving in Rando's Random Restaurant. They'll know when they get there, because it's random. And as they continue to argue, Professor Oak reveals himself. He apologizes for being late because he was over in Goldenrod recording his new podcast. Make sure you subscribe to his Patreon. Just make sure to become a follower of his YouTube channel and to subscribe to his Patreon. But after the Oaks are done shilling their restaurant/podcast empires, it's time to get down to business. Bill reminds us that the fossilized remains of Mew were used to create Mewtwo, and that project was secretly funded by Team Rocket. However, Mewtwo completely got out of control, destroyed the lab on Cinnabar Island, and flew off. But now that Team Rocket has the locator, they're going to be able to find and capture Mewtwo with the Master Ball that Giovanni has also stolen from Silph Co. Bill then lets us know that he has reason to believe that Mewtwo may be hiding in the nearby Cerulean Cave. And then Professor Oak casually drops a snap reference on him capturing a picture of Mewtwo over in that cave earlier. Rando brings up a fact that I often bring up in all of my videos: why aren't we getting somebody more important to take care of this? Verifying that the gym leaders in the Elite Four are apparently paid for by taxpayer money, but they're busy putting down Team Rocket in other areas, which means that we're the only ones left. And it looks like the three of us need to make our way over to Cerulean Cave. Over in the Cerulean Cave, we're going to grab ourselves an Aggron, who we're going to nickname Bigums. We come upon Rando, who has just been defeated by Archer and Ariana. Green then joins us, saying that she'll help Rando in the battle against the two. And this is where Rando has his anime monologue moment. He is more than a Pokemon trainer, more than a restaurateur, more than the grandson of a very famous podcaster / Pokemon professor. He is Rando Oak, and he'll never lose. Even deeper into the cave, we run into Surya one more time, and it looks like this time we won't be facing her alone. She declares that her boyfriend is going to defend her honor, and while this Rocket Grunt looks incredibly uncomfortable, he also seems at least a little into it. They start off with Tinkaton and Wigglytuff, and we're going to send in Steven and Bean. And I gotta say, I absolutely love this Tinkaton animation. The first thing we're going to do is kick up a Tailwind with Bean. And the Tinkaton goes for a Play Rough on Steven, doing barely anything. Once Steven gets a turn, he's going to fire off an Earthquake, which is going to do about a third to Wigglytuff, and just over half to Tinkaton. And thankfully we have Lightning Rod, because Bean can suck up that Thunderbolt and turn that excess energy into power. Bean is then going to go for an Air Slash on the Wigglytuff, and with the increased special attack, it's more than enough to take it down. This time Steven wins the speed tie on the Earthquake, then takes out the Tinkaton. Next out is going to come Scrafty and Weavile. Bean is immediately going to fire off a Dazzling Gleam, doing some massive damage to the Scrafty, grabbing the Oko, no problem. And once he hits the Weavile as well, it's going to get it way down into the red, where Steven can easily take it out with an Earthquake. Mega Mawile comes in as their final Pokemon, getting another Intimidate off on Steven, now being at -2. I'm going to swap Bean out for Zero. As the Mawile goes for a Sucker Punch, it's not going to be able to do anything to Zero, and Steven is going to fire off an Earthquake, and this was a terrible idea. I meant to switch out the other Pokemon. We swap out into Bean, and then going for a Bitter Blade, we can take down the Mega Mawile, no problem, and with that, we defeat Surya and her boyfriend. In the Celestial Forest, we are going to grab ourselves a Meowstic, who we're going to nickname Luna. In a clearing outside Cerulean Cave, we run into just like a bunch of Team Rocket grunts who say that they're going to stop us with the power of friendship. And with a flash of light, a Dragonite appears. And we all know who has a Dragonite in a vendetta against Team Rocket. And then the Dragonite hurricanes all of the Team Rocket grunts, blasting them off to parts unknown. Lance then lets us know that he'll stay behind and continue blasting off Team Rocket because he cannot get enough of it. As we enter a clearing, we find Giovanni once again. Rocket Grunt still blasting off in the distance from a Dragonite's hurricane. He lets us know how much he's sacrificed for this. As the camera pans over, we see that he's cornered Mewtwo, and he's come too far to turn back now. He then removes his jacket, revealing his rippling muscles. You aren't dealing with the average Pokemon trainer anymore, for I have ascended. I have become Super Giovanni. And the battle begins. Giovanni starts off by sending in his Persian, and we're going to send in Steven. My goal here is to stack up a couple of Dragon Dances so we can sweep as many of Giovanni's Pokemon as humanly possible. And with the exception of his Rhyperior, which has a Focus Sash, I should be able to KO all of his Pokemon in one hit. And after we get to +3 and get knocked down below half, the Persian decides to U-turn out into Nidoking. And while this thing does have Thunderbolt, a +3 Aqua Tail is more than enough to take it down in one shot. Next up is going to come is Kangaskhan, who is going to Mega Evolve right away. But fortunately, our Aqua Tail crits, and we can OHKO it as well. Next in comes his Nidoqueen, and going for another Aqua Tail, we can make quick work of the Nidoqueen. Once Persian comes back in, we unfortunately miss our Aqua Tail, as the Persian is going to U-turn out again. And this time he's going to send in his Tyranitar, which is going to kick up a Sandstorm. Fortunately for us, we don't miss this Aqua Tail, and we can take it down right away. Persian is going to come back in, and we go for another Aqua Tail on it, and we should be able to take it out in one shot as well. And this is going to leave his final Pokemon Rhyperior. Assuming this thing is going to go for a Stone Edge, we're going to swap Steven out, sending in Minecraft, and it does go for a Stone Edge, and it misses, which is great. On the following turn, the Rhyperior goes for a Mega Horn for reasons, I'm not sure why, and we're going to go for a Salt Cure, barely doing anything, but it is going to set up the Whirlwind effect and break it sturdy. On the following turn, the Rhyperior is going to go for a Drill Run and unfortunately score a crit, KOing Minecraft. But with the sturdy broken, we can send Ariel in, going for a Snipe Shot, scoring a crit and KOing the Rhyperior, and unfortunately we lost a Pokemon, but this fight could have gone a lot worse. After the battle with everything on the line, Giovanni is ready to throw in the towel, give up his ultimate plan to capture Mewtwo and become the strongest Pokemon trainer, and give up on Team Rocket's ultimate goal of world domination. Was this worth sacrificing his family? And then, out of nowhere, we are tied up by a random Ariados. A Rocket Grunt emerges from the left. Giovanni asks this young man's name, and he reveals himself to be Proton, the scariest member of Team Rocket. Giovanni immediately promotes Proton to Commander and tells him that he'll take care of things from here. And that's when Giovanni decides that maybe honor isn't such a good thing after all. With us tied up and helpless, Giovanni is reinvigorated and decides he will capture the Mewtwo. He won't give up all his evil ways. And with one toss of the Master Ball, Mewtwo is his. The Pokemon he will use to dominate the world. He then says that unfortunately he'll have to get rid of us. He unleashes the Mewtwo from its Pokeball and removes his shirt, powering up to 110%. Mewtwo, Psy Strike. And then, with a flash, a Pidgeot appears, freeing us from the Spider Silk, placing two Rando's Random Restaurant takeout menus, one attached to the Mewtwo's head, the other between Giovanni's glorious pectorals. And now enter Rando, and he's here to save the day. But we haven't even seen Giovanni's final form. He still has more clothing to remove, and clothing to put on this Mewtwo. And with the Mewtwo now in battle mode, it's time for us to take him on. We're going to send in Steven and Pidgeot and get the Intimidate off on the Mewtwo. The Mewtwo's going to fire off an Aura Sphere on Steven, which shouldn't do a whole heck of a lot. And neither does Pidgeot's Air Slash as we set up a Dragon Dance. Now at +1, the Mewtwo's going to fire off another Aura Sphere, this time at the Pidgeot, doing just over 50%, and we're going to go for a Crunch, and we do barely anything, but we do get the Defense Drop, which is great. Pidgeot sending a U-turn out, doing a little bit of chip damage, and then sending in Heracross. Mewtwo then fires off a Shadow Ball at the Heracross, doing about 40%, and we're going to activate another Dragon Dance. The Heracross then goes for a Mega Horn, and with the Defense Drop, we get it down just under 50%. Now at +2, we're going to go for another Crunch, getting him down to about a quarter, as the Mewtwo then goes for a Flamethrower, doing a lot more than I honestly expected, even for a crit. And then the Heracross is going to go for a Close Combat for some reason, doing barely anything. Our Citrus Berry then heals us up, and I'm pretty confident staying in, going for another Crunch, bringing the Mewtwo down to effectively nothing, getting another Defense Drop. The Mewtwo's then going to go for another Flamethrower, getting us down just below half, as Heracross goes for a Mega Horn and unfortunately misses. But this is going to give Steven the hero moment, going for one more Crunch, finishing off the Mewtwo. And with Mewtwo and Giovanni defeated, the game lets us know this combat does not count towards the Nuzlocke, which is good. But fortunately for me, I had a Gyarados. But I wonder if that also means that Minecraft's alive. With Giovanni defeated, the Mewtwo destroys the battle armor and flies away, no longer under Giovanni's control. Dejected and defeated, Giovanni says he's no longer fit to run Team Rocket, and declares that it is now completely disbanded. After its 150 years of history, this organization is coming to an end, and he submits himself to Lance to be arrested. Giovanni then reveals that there would be no court that would ever prosecute him because he owns so much of the justice system in addition to several mega corporations. And if they want to take care of him, they should just finish him off. And for the first time ever, Lance refuses to Hyper Beam or Hurricane a random Team Rocket man. And with Team Rocket defeated and disbanded, there's only one more thing left to do. And that's to get our 8th badge. So it looks like that message about Giovanni not being part of the Nuzlocke challenge also holds true with Minecraft. So even though he fainted in that battle, he's still here, which is great. And if anybody doesn't like that, this game literally doesn't let you revive fainted Pokemon, and he ain't fainted, so it didn't count. And now it's time for us to take on Uranus for our 8th and final badge. He starts off by sending in Scyther, and we're going to send him Minecraft. The Scyther's going to start things off by going for a Swords Dance, and I'm going to go for a Salt Cure. It's going to do about 50%, and then obviously set up the dot on the Scyther for the next couple of turns. The Scyther is then going to U-turn out, which is going to do about 30% to us, and he's going to send in Heracross as we go for a Fire Punch. Assuming a close combat, I'm going to swap out, sending in Nimbus, and I call it as it does about 50%. On the following turn, we're going to Mega Evolve, that way we can resist the next close combat even more, and then it decides to go for a Stone Edge, which is going to get us down to just 18 HP before we roost back up. Uranus is then going to use his first full restore, which is going to get rid of his guts, and we're going to go for a quad effective Air Slash and grab ourselves the Oko. Next up is going to come his Kabutops. And the Kabutops apparently has Ice Spinner, which I didn't know it had. Oh, no, and Nimbus goes down. So we're going to send in Ariel on the following turn, and I'm going to go for a Dragon Pulse because I honestly don't really know where my next move should be here. And we do just over 50% as the Kabutops goes for another Ice Spinner, doing about 50%. Uranus is then going to use his second full restore, and we're going to go for another Dragon Pulse, this time fortunately getting a crit and Okoing the Kabutops. Next up is going to come Yanmega, and we're going to go for a Hidden Power Ice, and we're going to get it down to about 50% as the Yanmega goes for an Air Slash, getting us down to just 22 HP. Assuming it's going to be faster than me with its Speed Boost active, we're going to swap out, sending in Minecraft as it decides to go for a Giga Drain, totally calling our swap, getting Minecraft down to just 56. Afraid to swap, I stay in as it goes for a Bug Buzz and takes down Minecraft once and for all. So we're going to go and send in Bean as it goes for a Bug Buzz yet again, but fortunately we can resist it. But unfortunately, it scores a crit, doing a decent amount of damage to us. But on the following turn, we go for an Air Slash, and we can take the Yanmega down. Uranus then sends in his Ace Pinsir, so we're going to swap Bean out, because I know that this thing needs its attack lowered. So once it Mega Evolves, we send in Steven, that way we can get the Intimidate off on him. The Pinsir then goes for an Aerial 8 return, doing just over 50% to Steven, which is insane. It's then going to go for a Quick Attack, getting us down to about 50%, and I'm going to go for an Aqua Tail, and I don't even do half to this thing, as it's going to go for another return, KOing Steven. You've got to be kidding me. So we're going to send in Zero, because honestly, I don't really know what to do here. As this Pinsir takes the opportunity to go for a Swords Dance, that's going to leave it open for me to go for a Bitter Blade, taking it down. With Scyther coming back in as his final Pokemon, it's going to leave itself open by going for a Swords Dance, and we can take it out with a Bitter Blade, defeating Uranus for our 8th and final badge, but our team is absolutely decimated now. In Mount Silver, we're going to grab ourselves Aswelius, who we're going to nickname Duggett. Just before reaching the gates of the Pokemon League, we run into Green once again. She was about to give up at Rock Tunnel, the most annoying place in all of Kanto, but here she is, standing before the Elite Four. She is part of a team of friends that helped stop Team Rocket and save the entire country, maybe even the entire Pokemon world. But she's not satisfied yet. She doesn't know if she's truly ready to take on the Pokemon League, and there's only one way to find out, and that's with a battle. Green starts off by sending in Annihilate, and we're going to send in Luna. I'm going to go for a Calm Mind on the first turn to start stacking up a bit. And the Annihilate is going to go for a Poison Jab, doing a surprising amount of damage. On the following turn, we're going to go for another Calm Mind. And the Annihilate goes for another Poison Jab, getting me down to just 48 HP. Once my Citrus Berry heals me to about half, we're going to go for a Psychic and take out the Annihilate. Out next comes her Snorlax. And honestly, knowing I don't really have a good option here, I'm going to keep Luna in, going for a Psychic, scoring a massive hit as a Body Slam comes in and KOs us. I genuinely thought that the Snorlax was going to go for a Crunch, otherwise I would have sent in Zero. So after she uses her first full restore, we're going to use a Swords Dance on Zero. Not sure if this thing is Thick Fat or Immunity, we're going to go for a Psycho Cut, doing about a third, as it tries to go for an Earthquake, which luckily we can avoid. Risking it going for a Bitter Blade, we score the KO, and I guess it had Immunity. Vaporeon comes out next. So we're going to swap out, this time sending in Ariel as the Aurora Beam comes in, doing just a bit of chip damage to us. Then firing off a Dragon Pulse, we're going to do about a quarter as another Aurora Beam comes in, doing the same. Another Dragon Pulse is going to just get it below half, and we're in a little bit of a race here as we fire Dragon Pulses back and forth, until inevitably she goes for a full restore, healing back up. And we manage to score a crit, which just means after one more Dragon Pulse, we take the Vaporeon down. Charizard comes in next, and I know it's going to Mega Evolve, which is going to make Snipe Shot useless, so we swap out, sending in Sean as it goes for an Air Slash. Then going for a Sun-boosted Flamethrower, Sean gets taken down. So we're going to swap into Bigums to try to bait another Fire move, and then swap into Zero, and it goes for that Flamethrower, so now we got a Flash Fire. And even though it's not very effective, we're going to try to go for a Bitter Blade as the Dragon Pulse comes in, doing a bit of damage to us. And a Flash Fire boosted Sun boosted Bitter Blade does just about 60%. The Charizard then goes for another Dragon Pulse, getting us down a little bit as we go for another Bitter Blade, scoring the KO. Noctowl comes in next, and we're going to keep the Bitter Blading so that we can keep healing up, getting it down to about a quarter as the Psyshock comes in, doing barely anything. And with one more, we take it down. Scizor comes in as our final Pokemon, and going for a Bitter Blade, we're going to knock it down to its Focus Sash, and as an Iron Head does just a bit of damage to us. On the following turn, we go for a Shadow Sneak, securing the KO, and defeating Green. In Indigo City, I'm going to grab myself a Granbull. After making some final adjustments to our team, let's take one more look before we face off against the Elite Four. First up, we have Jaws the Aerodactyl, with Iron Head, Crunch, Rock Slide, and Earthquake. Zero the Aegislash, with Bitter Blade, Shadow Sneak, Psycho Cut, and Swords Dance. Dugat the Hydreigon, with Dragon Pulse, Dark Pulse, Flamethrower, and Nasty Plot. Bean the Sephiroth, with Air Slash, Dazzling Gleam, Calm Mind, and Roost. Ariel the Kingdra, with Snipe Shot, Dragon Pulse, Hidden Power Ice, and Signal Beam. And finally, DK the Rillaboom with Grassy Glide, Drain Punch, Iron Head, and Earthquake. And I'm pretty sure I accidentally cut this part out, but you can get the Gen 8 and 9 starters here in Indigo City at a hotel. And now it's time for us to take on Lorelei and her Ice Pokemon. She starts off by sending in Aurorus, and we send in Zero. Assuming she's going to go for an Earthquake on the first turn, we're going to start off by going for a Swords Dance, and she sets up a Stealth Rock. Taking this opportunity to get to +4, we're going to go for another Swords Dance as the Aurorus fires off a Blizzard. Going for a Bitter Blade, we're going to knock this thing down to its Focus Sash, and that's when she goes for a Power Gem, doing about 50%. But we can fire off one more Bitter Blade, grabbing the KO. Next up comes Mamoswine, and going for a +4 Bitter Blade, I'm hoping it's enough to KO it, and it is. In next comes Weavile, and it outspeeds us, going for a Night Slash, getting us down to just 17 HP. But once we go for a Bitter Blade, we can pick up the Yoko and heal back up to about half. Lapras comes in next, and what I really love is that the Gigantamax Pokemon have been reworked to be special Mega Evolutions, but we take it down in just one shot. Which is going to lead into our final Pokemon, Jinx. And we're going to go for a super effective Shadow Sneak, picking up the Yoko on the Jinx, and with that, we've defeated Lorelei. And now it's time for us to take on Bruno and his big old burly fight boys. He starts off with Steelix, the biggest and burliest fight boy of them all, and we send in Zero. Assuming it's going to go for an Earthquake, we're going to set up a Swords Dance on the first turn, and we call it. I'm going to take this opportunity to get to +4, just in case it tries to go for an Earthquake again, because AI. And with a third one, now we are at +6 as it continues to just try Earthquaking us. Now going for a Bitter Blade at +6, we can pick up the Yoko, no problem. Out next comes Hitmonlee, and we're going to go for a Bitter Blade yet again, picking ourselves the KO. In next comes Lucario, and we're going to get it down to its Focus Sash as it fires off a Dark Pulse, doing some pretty decent damage to us. But we can pick up the KO with another Bitter Blade. In next is going to come is Ace Machamp, and just like with Lapras, Gigantamax Machamp has been reworked into an awesome Mega that added the ground typing. But +6 is more than enough to OHKO this thing. Finally, Hitmonchan comes in, and going for one more Bitter Blade, we can pick up the OHKO, and Zero is putting in the work so far against the Elite Four. And now it's time for us to take on Agatha and her ghastly ghouls. She starts off with Crobat, and we send an Ariel. It can outspeed us in the first turn, going for a Flying Gem boosted Acrobatics, and it scores a massive critical hit, getting us down to just 31. And we get it down to effectively nothing. So we're going to swap out, this time sending in Jaws, as it decides to go for a Cross Poison this time. And this is when Jaws is going to Mega Evolve, and outspeed, going for an Iron Head, taking down the Crobat. Out next comes Golurk. I roll the dice knowing this thing has both Thunder Punch and Ice Punch, and luckily a Crunch is more than enough to take it down. In next comes Mismagius, and we're going to risk it here again knowing it has a Power Gem, and we scored a crit and an Iron Head, taking it out. This is going to lead into Gengar, who's going to Mega Evolve, but luckily we still outspeed, going for a Crunch, grabbing the OHKO. One Chandelure comes in as our final Pokemon. We're going to go for another Crunch, pick up the KO, and I honestly expected to lose Aerodactyl here because every single one of our Pokemon had a counter for either Rock or for Flying, but we made it through. And now it's time for us to take on Lance and his mythical dragon dudes. Lance starts off with Haxorus, and we send in Bean. We're going to outspeed on the first turn, going for a Calm Mind, which is really awesome. I cannot believe I outspeed this thing as it goes for a Poison Jab, getting us down to about half. We're then going to fire off a Dazzling Gleam and grab ourselves the OHKO. Ampharos comes in next, and we're going to stay in, assuming it's his Mega Evolution, as I call it. And I didn't realize this thing had Mold Breaker, but yes, we score a crit, and the Dazzling Gleam is still enough for the OHKO. After next comes Kingdra, and we're going to do the same thing here, going for a +1 Dazzling Gleam, as we do a pretty good hit, getting it down into the red. But it's going to fire off an Ice Beam, but it barely does anything to us. For some reason, Lance at this point decides pivoting into a ×4 weakness is a much better idea, so we can grab the OHKO on the Hydreigon. Kingdra comes back in just so that way we can take it out with another Dazzling Gleam. When Dragonite comes in as his final Pokemon, we're going to go for another Dazzling Gleam, and we're going to get it down pretty low as it activates his weakness policy. And the Dragonite's going to go for a Dragon Claw, KOing Bean. Wanting to make sure I outspeed this thing, I'm going to swap into Jaws, Mega Evolve, go for a Crunch, and take down the Dragonite. And we are heading into the championship battle with 5 out of our 6 Pokemon. After defeating Lance, he lets us know that there is one challenger remaining, because Rando also defeated the 4 of them. And that's when the rest of the Elite Four members join us in Lance's chamber. And they don't want to miss the fight. And not only do they not want to miss the fight, but the test kitchen for Rando's Random Restaurant is actually located in the Champion's Chamber. So before they clock out for the day, they want to grab themselves a couple of chicken nuggets. As the 5 of us enter the Champion's Chamber, we see the entire back wall lined with Rotom Heats. Frying up God knows what, it smells horrible in here. I ask Rando what he's done, and he says, it's random. All of it, random. And people are gonna eat it up. I see Bruno over in the corner salivating. Rando then lets us know that we have to try the first sample of Rando's Random Restaurant, as he removes what I hope is calamari from one of the air fryers, presenting it to me. And that's when Agatha steps forward. No, the taste test cannot begin yet, because there's one more person who hasn't arrived yet, and that's Rando's grandfather, Professor Oak himself. Rando steps up to his grandfather and offers him the first sample of, like I said, I hope calamari. Professor Oak takes a bite, and he says,
Wonderful!
A great success. Rando's Random Restaurant is a 100% success, and their expansion will soon be across the entirety of the Kanto region and beyond. But only one more thing remains. Who will be the Pokemon League champion? And we're going to decide that right now. Rando starts off by sending in Pidgeot, and we send in Jaws. We're going to Mega Evolve right away, outspeeding and going for a Rock Slide, and we can grab ourselves a Yoko on the Pidgeot. Next up comes Heracross. And realizing I don't really have a good move to use against this thing, we're going to go for a Stab Rock Slide, doing about 50%, and thankfully it just goes for a Shadow Claw. And on the following turn, one more Rock Slide can take it down. Out next comes Rhyperior. And we're going to go for an Iron Head, scoring a decent hit, getting it down to about 50% as the Rhyperior goes for a Stone Edge, KOing our Jaws. So we're going to send Ariel in, go for a Snipe Shot, and then finish off the Rhyperior. Next up comes Alakazam. He tries to go for a Focus Blast, missing us as we fire off a Signal Beam, doing about 50%. On the following turn, it's going to go for a Shadow Ball, doing a decent amount of damage, and we're going to go for a Stab Snipe Shot, picking up the crit and KOing it. Venusaur comes in. Once he Mega Evolves his Venusaur, and I love this sprite, we're going to swap into Duggette as he goes for a Sludge Bomb, doing about 50%. On the following turn, we're going to go for a Flamethrower, doing barely anything because I forgot this thing has thick fat, and we're getting knocked down to just 17 HP. Knowing I don't really have a better option here, I have to sacrifice Duggette, going for a Dragon Pulse, scoring a crit, but ultimately she goes down. So we're going to send in Zero, go for a Psycho Cut, and then pick up the KO. Arcanine comes in next, and is going to be his 6th and final Pokemon. I go for a Psycho Cut knowing I don't have time to set up since it has Crunch, and I do barely 25% as a Crunch comes in, getting me down just below half. Hoping for a crit, I'm going to go for a Psycho Cut again, and we barely get it down to half before Zero goes down. The MVP of this run, may you rest. So we're going to send in Ariel, outspeed, go for a Snipe Shot, and finish off the Arcanine. And with that, we become the Pokemon League champions. But Rando doesn't sweat it. He just needed to become the champion for the publicity of his new restaurant, and with Professor Oak being impressed by his cooking, that's all he really cared about in the first place. And that, everybody, is how I beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Anil. And now, after putting nearly 20 hours into this game, I can confidently say that it is indeed the greatest Kanto experience out there. Other games are harder, other games have cooler gimmicks, but as just a straight Kanto remake with Generation 1 through 9 Pokemon and Mega Evolution, I think this definitely takes the cake. So once again, if you liked the video and you made it this far and you're not subscribed yet, well, come on, hit the button. Only 20% of the people that watch my videos are subscribed to the channel, and most of you have been here before. And of course, let me know what other ROM hacks and fan games you'd like me to tackle in the future for different Nuzlocke challenges. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya!